Hello, welcome to another episode of So Fly. It's beginning of July. We're back in the studio. My name is Mitch. We've got Yilma here.
Hey, everybody.
And we're recording out of the Hive today. Normally we're recording out of our space in the One Method there in CBC building, but switched it up because Yilma and I are working away. And we've got a very special show today. Actually, today's episode is one of a few shows we're doing to kind of just raise awareness around our waters and the need to protect them in Ontario and beyond, and just sort of understand our impact on them. More and more, I think, with climate change, with single-use plastics, we're understanding just how much of an impact that we have on our environment. So, we just had this idea to just kind of sit down and talk about our waters and our need to sort of be stewards and protect them. I think, we're a fly fishing podcast, so obviously we have an interest in our waters, not only because they give us so much in terms of fly fishing and activity and being on the water, but also just because they've moved us. I think they've changed sort of the way we look at life. Our rivers have had like a really deep emotional impact on all of us. I think, Yilma, you can agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think all the listeners out there can also agree with that statement. So, it goes beyond activity. I think our water has really become a big part of our lives emotionally, and we're truly care about the water that we fish and the ecosystems and the animals within them. So for us and for anyone, it's, I think it's also easy for us to say it's important people take care of our water. Someone else will take care of it. Someone out there will do it. But I think more and more we're realizing just doing these podcasts that someone else is us. I think that, we've done an event at Patagonia last summer. We've met so many different people in the community, and people are talking about this need for change on the rivers. So yeah, this is part of one of those episodes where we're going to be talking about, water stewardship and the ecosystems. So that's why we're doing this. We're just dedicating these few episodes to guests who have either dedicated their life's work to fighting for our water or have a deep interest in protecting it because it's also moved them. Our guests for the series will include Eric, our buddy up at Temagami Outfitting Co., Eric Finkel. We're going to have Les Stroud on the show, otherwise known as Survivor Man. He's going to be talking about Temagami. And we have today's guest as well, who's Mark Mattson. Mark, how's it going?
Great.
Thanks.
Let me just kick the door right down.
Please, yes.
I started as a fisher, so.
Yeah, you did, right? That's awesome.
No embarrassment there.
That's perfect, yeah. Mark, what's swim, drink, fish? Maybe we just kick it off with a little introduction to that.
Sure. I mean, swim, drink, fish was a reaction to the no swim, no fish, no drink signs that we see all over the place, particularly in urban centers. So I was a lawyer. I started as a criminal lawyer and got involved in environmental issues. I grew up on a little place called Wolf Island, right across from Kingston, and I was just a outdoors kid who grew up catching minnows and crayfish and frogs most of my life. And and as it developed and I became a lawyer, I got really angry about those signs. They were more prevalent than ever, and I started understanding a lot of why these risk assessments were falling on the fishermen not to eat the fish or the people not to drink or swim in the water. And so anyways, I decided to dedicate my life to trying to take those signs down. So swimmable, drinkable, fishable water is my goal. Swim, drink, fish is building a movement of people who care about that goal, the gold standard of most of our environmental laws. And we're building a movement of people working for it. So that's what I do, and that's who I am.
Oh man, that's awesome. We first heard about swim, drink, fish. We've seen posts on social. Fraser Waterkeeper we follow as well, and different organizations. So let's go back then to Wolf Island, where it all began. Then I mean, I think it's interesting. Like, what are some of your first memories of Wolf Island and Lake Ontario?
Just falling out of a car after a 7-hour trip from Kitchener-Waterloo for 2 months of doing nothing but catching minnows, and knowing the rock that I could look at where I could see the dark little shadows above it, and finding that spot and catching minnows. That to me, I spent so many hours, and I had a lot of brothers and sisters and a lot of people down there, and it was an old family place, and it still is. Yeah. But my happy place was on the water and catching minnows and frogs and worms and crayfish. That was what I loved to do because it was in preparation of going fishing. Yeah, for sure. Do you remember your first fish? Well, I can't remember my first fish, but there's this famous picture of me, the Watermark Project, which was Gord Downey was a board member and a friend of mine I grew up with, and he he invented what we call the Watermark Project, which is that everyone has a scar that they can never forget about being around water, whether it's fishing or something that happened within their family that really scarred them and left them caring about water later on in life. So he calls it the Watermark Project, and we actually collect those stories and we post them and geotag them to their watersheds. Yeah. But, you know, we looked for a picture, and I was 12 years old. It was in 1973, which is relevant because prior to 2019 and 2017, it was the highest water on Lake Ontario. 1973 was sort of the epic flooding in early April and May on Lake Ontario, and I was 12 years old. And it was a Sunday, I guess. It might have been the Easter weekend. I think it was the Easter weekend. It was the only time we dressed up was to go to church on Sundays. But I had gone in my church clothes into the marsh, and I looked into the fields, and the water was so high, the fish were in the grass, and I was like, what the hell is that fish? And I freaked out, and I spent the next 4 hours trying to catch it. And when I caught it, it was a dogfish. Oh, it was a bowfin. Yeah, and it's got the little dot. And I'm holding it up with my family in this picture from 1973. As Matt, who's here with me, knows, we blow it up into huge pictures, and it's called the Watermark Project. Yeah. But it was probably one of the most exciting fishes I ever caught because I thought it might be a Atlantic salmon that somehow escaped back into the river and came back into Wolf Island and Lake Ontario after 20 years of the seaway. So that's what I thought. But no, it turned out to be just a, you know, they're pretty cool fish.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. Yeah.
And a special one too. With a story like that.
But, you know, we were mainly smallmouth bass, you know, pike. If we catch a muskie, that was like anybody caught a muskie that dominated the year.
Oh, for sure.
What else? A lot of perch, and you know they're not around as much. The perch and the rock bass and the sunfish, you know. But anyways, and the crappies. That was our thing. I've grown since then, and people have taken to me on more exciting adventures around the world, and now I'm into fly fishing as well. So, but that's where it all started.
Oh man, that's amazing. So I guess where did the passion for water and protecting the waterways and the resources begin?
Well, like I said, I grew up in Kitchener, which was a real factory town. And the Grand River was a forgotten river. Pollution was a part of our life, normalized. My father died when I was young. It was part of his Irish family on Wolf Island, and so my mother really made an effort. We had 7 kids to stay down there and keep that as a place where we had access and to go. But you know, I think it was particularly when I started working in the factories in Kitchener. I worked on the hog kill line at Schneider's Meats, and I'd kill 1,600 pigs a shift. And for 5 years, and I'd stand there, you know, every 13 seconds we'd kill another pig. And I was put into the knife line because I said it. They asked me, what do you want to be? And I said, a lawyer. Stupid answer. I should have said something else, doctor. You don't need your hands.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was given a knife and I was sent to the hog kill line. And anyways, and I would think often standing there, we were paid well. I mean, it was 1978 and I was getting $12 an hour. And you know, and I'd stand there and think about where I wanted to be in life. And so I decided to go off to Queen's University because it was across from Wolf Island in Kingston, and I wanted to be near the water. And that's why I ended up there. And of course, Kingston had the prisons. So after I went to law school, I worked here in Toronto at Osler, Haas and Harcourt and was hired back as a corporate lawyer. And I said, no, I want to be a civil rights lawyer. I'm going to go right back to Kingston and go into the prisons and work. And I did. But by being there, that's when I started seeing condoms and tampons and needles floating up on Wolf Island. That's when I started meeting the kids I grew up with saying, don't eat the fish from there. And most of the people saying, don't ever swim in the lake. And that's when, you know, there was one guy who was convicted of murder who was a really close friend of mine, believe it or not, Lawrence Stocking. And I represented him on an immigration appeal hearing. And he was a young man, made mistakes. And anyways, he told me, and his family really said, you've got to do more of that environmental stuff. That's awesome. My mother watches you on TV. And I was doing some environmental and criminal. Yeah. And it just, at some point I decided, you know, it was a lot easier to represent fish than it was to represent people. And I thought fish needed, they didn't have the money, and I wasn't going to get rich, but they needed lawyers just as much as anyone else. So, that's where my love was. And then Robert Kennedy Jr., who had become a friend of mine, believe it or not, like he seems like a big name, but he'd become a friend of mine in the early 90s on a case I had done with the Cree. And he called me in 1999, 2000 and said, time's up. You got to become a waterkeeper. So I did in 2001.
Wow. So, okay, what was the first step then into that foray into
Well, there's so
world?
many steps.
Yeah.
I mean, going to law school, falling in love with fish and water. But in terms of giving up my practice and doing this, it was just, Robert Kennedy's a very amazing guy. His father died at 14. My father died at 14. I don't know if either of us ever grew up. We're both like little Boy Scouts, and we could spend our whole day out in the field and on the water and fishing. And that's just the way it is. And I was surprised that someone that famous and that well known was that juvenile. But I realized it wasn't really that juvenile. It was really just he lives there, and he still does to this day. And just saw him last week out in Vancouver. And I mean, he's still he can't get over the fish he caught when he was 14 years old. And so that was a big change for me. But to believe in someone, to have a mentor and a theory behind it that we need to give meaning and force to environmental laws. People are stealing from us. They're stealing the fish. They're stealing they're stealing our recreational areas, that this isn't right. The laws say it's not appropriate. So I came at it from that legal point of view. I can tell you I've changed my point of view since then.
Oh, yeah?
I don't think just enforcing the law is really going to get us anywhere.
It's not enough.
No. And that's why I changed really to swim, drink, fish, which was
mindsets.
Yeah, it was a positive thing. People want to know what I'm for. I'm for swimmable, drinkable, fishable water, as opposed to being against things. And we talk about that a lot. And the other thing was I had to build a movement. Like, I'm not a hero. I'm not out there. I'm not going to save your fisheries or anybody who's listening to this podcast. I'm not out there to save their river or their lake or their fisheries. I wish I could, but I'm only one person and there are so many problems. So what we need to do is build a movement.
Absolutely. And
it's a movement of people. And those people have to work. And so along with my compatriot for the last 20 years, Kristen Tully at, Swim, Drink, Fish, we've built all these amazing platforms and tools now that are engaging people in water, and starting with recreational water, because that's the simplest. Fishing, swimming, boating, paddling, and really doing water quality testing around that, particularly with bacteria and E. coli, which are what are the concerns, and posting that on Swim Guide, posting that on Great Lakes Guide, these platforms we have. Swim Guide now is all around the world, 3 million people, 10 countries. We invented it for Toronto, but it just keeps growing, and the community keeps growing because they love engaging in the water and finding out. Everyone talks about not swimming in this water, but what is it that we're looking for, and how do I get the answer? And so when they actually engage in that, you guys should come down one day. We do it every Tuesday and Thursday here in Toronto. You can learn how to take the sample, how long it takes, and then you see the results, and then you go, that's great. I got to bring one. So that's simple. And as we engage people, they get really involved. And from there, they go on to become voices in incredible ways. They learn other things. They learn about fisheries. They learn about metals and, PCBs. They learn about polyaromatic hydrocarbons. They learn about, these new fish retardants. And they don't have to be angry. They don't have to be against anything. They just have to really represent what they love. And by doing that, the results are incredible. So that's why I shifted. I'm building a movement, people working for it. And the results are incredible. I mean, we just saw, I know it's a fishing show in Kingston and Wolf Islands where I learned to fish, but the Gord Edgar Downey Pier in Kingston, we helped fund some of that. Well, that was a city that we grew up in. You couldn't swim in the Kingston waterfront.
Just weren't supposed to swim.
No, just like so much of here.
Yeah.
And the cities didn't want the liability. So we prosecuted them for their landfill. We tried to prosecute them for their sewage. Eventually, the head of the Kingston utility, a guy named Jim Keach, said, listen, why am I fighting these guys? I agree with what they're doing. So he came up with real-time monitoring. They invested in their sewage treatment plant. And then they did a waterfront restoration. And just before Gord died, I said to him, we had money from the W. Garfield Weston Foundation. And they said, pick iconic projects, ones that'll make all the difference for swimmable, drinkable, fishable water. And I said, that one will, because it's an urban center with tons of kids who grow up who think they can never connect with the lake. And if we can build a pier where they can go and feel safe and jump in and experience what it is to jump in the water, and, you know, and fishing as well, and just getting out there and feeling like it's theirs, we can make a huge difference. So, and then I asked Gord to give his name. It all came together beautifully. The architecture, Cormier from Montreal did a beautiful job.
Yeah.
And, 60,000 kids last year went swimming, and I'm sure it'll be a couple 100,000 this year. And every city's now going, why don't we have urban swimming piers? Like Toronto, the freshwater capital of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Why don't we have an urban swimming pier off Ontario Place?
Yeah.
It is crazy. And that's where you're going to have your first experience of wilderness in this lake.
Yeah.
And see the stars.
An incredible lake.
Yeah, incredible
it's
lake.
incredible.
Yeah.
Didn't see how many pike are out there.
Oh, just from a fishing standpoint.
We get those
it's
pictures
awesome
of
too.
those guys catching the pike in the harbor.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
God, they look like they came from the Yukon.
I know, it's true.
I was just talking
On
to
paddleboards.
Yeah. So I know this is, and I'd love to talk to you about fly fishing, but I just wanted to let you know a bit about how I got to where I am.
No, absolutely.
we're here to talk to you.
I want to dive into it a little bit more, even just because I think, like you said, this is another reason why we're doing these shows, is because I think the more we get into the fly fishing community, and also it's not just people in the community. Like, I think the idea of like I said earlier, single-use plastics is starting to come up more and more. Where you go to the river and you're fishing, and sometimes you see more garbage than you see fish, which is kind of insane. And I think more people are realizing that, and people are anglers, just regular anglers they're just fish. They don't have a podcast. They don't own a fly fishing store. They're just fishing. They come off the river with a net full of garbage, and they post a picture on Instagram, and it's starting to build a little bit more awareness around it. And I think your point about having a collective movement is the only way forward. It's 100% true. So another reason why we're doing this is to sort of start trying to like usher in some kind of, just get people talking about it and thinking about it more. But
knowledge.
I
think there's a lot of ignorance behind the subject. So this is one of the things that could educate them.
And the pier was one thing I did want to talk about, just because
great.
I think it's an awesome project, and 100% I think it's something that more places need. Like, I grew up in Ottawa, similar kind of thing. The Ottawa River was always too dirty to swim in, or they'd have these advisories that seemed like they were happening too often, where it's like, oh, E. coli's too high, can't go swimming. And
Ottawa's got a really cool thing. Meredith Brown, the Ottawa Riverkeeper. First of all, they want to build a really great river house. And I think that's really cool. I hope that happens. But they've got this cool thing. And Kingston has real-time monitoring on its website where you can tell when the sewage is discharging.
Yeah.
But what Ottawa did is they put a red light, like a hockey light in the goal.
Like a goal, yeah.
And the goal goes on, the red light goes on.
Yeah.
When the sewage is going in the water, the red light goes on.
Okay.
So I would love that here in Toronto.
Yeah.
It would like send Torontonians, what?
Yeah,
They've got red lights on all these different pipes.
Terrify everybody.
That was one of the recommendations we made to the Minister of Environment recently from our harbor monitoring reports here in Toronto, is that we need more awareness. We need more transparency. And one of the things that Ottawa did with that red light for particularly the kayakers, they have a national kayaking team in there. When that pipe discharges and it's a combined sewer overflow, and I know it's something that happened 30 years ago and they haven't separated the sewage and it rains from the stormwater. Hey man, just be honest about it.
Yeah, for sure.
And
if it's happening.
Yeah, and that red light warns everyone, and it's great. So I'd like to see more red lights on the water when the sewage is going in, and then everyone would have more confidence when it's not.
Yeah, that's true too.
So
yeah, no, I mean, I think accessibility of knowledge. Ottawa's great, and the Ottawa River is a beautiful river. Yeah. Absolutely amazing. The fishing's incredible.
Yeah,
the paddling, like you said, is amazing on there. Oh man. But when I came to like Ontario, like towards southern Ontario, because I moved to Toronto about 5 years ago, and but when I was a kid, Lake Erie, I remember dead fish on the beaches, but people have come together to try to change that, and obviously things have gotten better over time. But I think just the pier, to your point, like has an amazing ability to inspire people at a young age and start that sort of stewardship
and
early,
connect
right?
them. Yeah. And so the number one question we had for the last 20 years is, can I swim in Lake Ontario? And a lot of, but whatever, those kids who experience that pier in Kingston will never ask that question again, and they'll be part of the movement going forward. So that's great. I think, in recreational water is one thing, fishing is recreational as well. And, for you guys, obviously, and me, that's how I was a swimmer and all those other things, but it was fishing.
Yeah.
That's what meant so much. And I know there's catch and release, and a lot of that, believe it or not, was a lot of it was sort of like false charity, which they wanted you to catch and release, not just because you were part of the conservation movement, because they didn't want you to eat the fish.
Right.
And so there was a bit of false charity behind it.
Because they were just they weren't edible in a way.
Right. And they were worried, and so they were encouraging you to do it. And so that bothered me too, and particularly when I was in the north and indigenous communities and stuff, and I saw the mercury in the fish, and I was like, oh my God. Yeah. But, to fall in love with fishing and fisheries and have water literacy and understand the fish and the migration periods. Yeah. Like Lake Ontario, 40% of Lake Ontario's biomass was made up of American eel prior to the St. Lawrence Seaway. They're almost extinct. They're still there. I know they catch them off Toronto Island still. A lot of people, when I was a kid in the 70s, American eel still bundled up. Yeah. The indigenous community, they were easy to catch and live off because you could put them in the bowl, but or in the bucket and eat them. But do Ontarians realize that the American eel lays its eggs in the Sargasso Sea off Bermuda, and then only the females come into Lake Ontario. The males go over to Europe, and they live here for 20 to 25 years and then go all the way back out the sea to lay their eggs. Like, this is an exotic animal. Yeah. It's the third most expensive fish on the Japanese fish market in terms of eating. And, the salmon does the opposite, of course. The salmon comes off the ocean, lays its eggs, and either dies or goes back out. But the American eel is such a funky, interesting, iconic fish for Lake Ontario. It couldn't get beyond the Niagara Falls, so it didn't go to any of the other Great Lakes. It was just Lake Ontario's fish. Super cool. And it bums me out that people confuse it with the lamprey. Yes. Or snakes. Yep. And this fish, so connected to Toronto, Hamilton, Niagara Falls, Rochester, Buffalo, Oshawa. And this is its home. These are the biggest, and they're the females, and nobody knows about it. So, I just feel like that sort of literacy and those stories need to be told as much as the stories of me going to Labrador and fishing on the St. Michael's River or the Tom Lumsden River or the Big River and seeing like incredible salmon and brook trout. I think there also are a lot of magical stories right here on Lake Ontario. And if we care deeply enough about it, we could restore it, because they'll come back. Yeah. It's not like they're gone. It's just whether we care enough to allow them to swim back up the river and back out.
So what are some of the main problems facing, I guess, the population of American eagles?
The seaway.
The seaway is the biggest thing.
The dam. Yeah. The Moses Saunders Dam. Yeah. It particularly hurts them on the way home, because when they go out, they want to go at the fastest water, which is through the turbines, and they get nicked and cut, and then they never make it. Right. So what's happened is in the late 60s and the early 70s, when I was down there, we saw all kinds of American eel. The seaway didn't affect them at all. But the truth is they live here for 20 to 25 years. So weren't going to see the damages until the late 80s and 90s. Wow. And now we've watched their disappearance. So we work with OPG. I mean, OPG didn't mean to do any of this. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to pollute. No. But we all do. So let's just face up to it.
I think it's a good point.
Yeah, and we all have to do better. And so let's not go around and I'm not here to scapegoat anybody. I'm just looking for those who are willing to work towards a swimmable, drinkable fish future. That's my movement. And there are lots of ways now that they can figure out ways to get the fish to bypass. One thing they're doing is commercial fishermen can no longer sell them. Yeah. There's a small commercial fishery off Prince Edward Island. If they catch the fish, they keep them in a bucket and they drive them up to Cornwall and they throw them on the other side of the dam and they get $25 a fish.
It's a big job driving the fish up above the dam. I mean, I've heard of that activity, but
but it's they care too. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it's cultural, right? It's a lot of this stuff. Most of the fishermen I know on Lake Ontario now, the commercial fishermen, they don't make any money. It costs them more than what they're making in terms of keeping their licenses. The perch are disappearing. The crappie, they get some money for. They're trying to pay them for pike, but they hate selling pike to commercial markets for pennies. But it's part of their life. It's part of where they hang out with their family. It's part of what they do in the spring. It's part of getting them out in the water. Yeah. And and they're going through a hard time right now. And so, I think it's terrible that a great lake like St. Lawrence Market was built to sell fish from Lake Ontario.
Yeah.
You can still go to the market and see where the boats used to pull up in the back.
Oh, really? I didn't
still
know.
got the piers.
Wow.
Oh yeah, they do.
And
Yeah.
you can't buy a fish from Lake Ontario at that market now.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yet it's adjacent to one of the great lakes in the world that for hundreds of years, that's what the food source was for this community. So anyways, it can come back, but it's going to take leaders and it's going to take crazy artists and writers and singers and poets and people who can put real dreams back in the minds of Ontarians so that they can reimagine their watershed. And hopefully one day we'll be fly fishing on the lake and on the Don River.
That's one of our goals as well, is the Dawn and the Humber.
Yep.
It's a great point.
We still see steelhead running through them.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right up the Dawn.
I know.
Which is amazing. It's a great point about, like you say, like singers and poets and people that can inspire people to dream. I think Gord Downey was one of those people. How did you and Gord first meet? You said you met when you were kids. Eh?
Hey, that was my question.
Oh, sorry, Alma.
So Gord, when I went to Queens, Gord had just moved from Amherst View back to right across from the Gord Edgar Downey Pier now. His family bought a house just on the back of Queens University. So, I got to know him at university a little bit. He wasn't really much of a singer at the time. And he just was an artsy guy. And we were both towners because I considered myself from town, as did he. Everyone else was from out of town, Montreal, Vancouver, all across the country. Anyway, so we hung out, talked about Northrop Frye, talked about the lake, talked about books. And then one day I saw him play at Alfie's and it was like, what is going on? This guy, nervous energy, incredible talent and focus. So anyways, we became friends and he used to play at my house. At my brother-in-law owned S&R. It was an old discount department store in Kingston and they had an empty warehouse. So it was $10 all you could drink and the Tragic Lip would play there in 1983 and that helped us a lot. To make money and get through school, and it was a lot of fun. And then I went off to law school, and we stayed in touch. And then we really bonded over Boston Bruin games here at Maple Leaf Gardens, and I had tickets. I was at law school, or I was a lawyer here with my wife. And anyway, so Gord and I were really great friends. And eventually, he called me. I think it was around 1998 from New Orleans, and he was traveling down there. And he said, "Listen, I got to get involved, and I got to support what you're doing." So. I went on different tours with him. We did what was called Heart of a Lake, where he'd do music, I'd do rhetoric. He brought a dancer, Andrea and Ann. We had a poet, Tanis Rideout, and we'd go town to town. Tragic Lip would raise money for us. He became a board member, an ambassador. We worked, and then we went north a lot. We'd go up to Moose Factory, and that really opened his eyes to the north. But he was so famous as a Canadian. I'm walking around doing my thing, and Gord was like more than anyone else. Like he just represented so much about who we were and what we thought about, and yet he was just a friend on the other hand. And with his 4 kids and wife, and just like the rest of us, biking around Toronto, and nobody saw him. And we did a lot of we just hung out a lot, and I watched that fame grow and grow. And then the tragedy when his father died, the next day he had the seizure, and to have the brain tumor and the first, tumor removed and the next one removed. And then to be so focused on going on tour across the country and bringing everyone together, including all of us and our work and the Indigenous work. And Gord was, he represents something that he always did. Wasn't just at the end, but he really was the driving force was behind Swim Drink Fish, Waterkeeper, Kristen and I at our work. He went to every case, to every hearing. He would get out there and write about it, do poems about it, raise money for it. He was never the celebrity. He was always, but he was always there. And that meant the world to our work and everything we did. And I taught him how to fish. I took him north and we fished and we fly fish, and and he just loved it so much, and he wanted his children to learn how to do that. So Louis and Clem and his daughters, they really learned how to fish up on the Onakwana and the Abitibi River. And, that meant so much to him. And he grew up, not necessarily having all those. He didn't feel like the lake was his. he thought it belonged to the polluters and other people. And when he realized that really, you know, he had a role, I know how this radio show started, and I love radio, and I love that you started this way. But when you said, yeah, like, these are your rivers, these are your places. And if anybody's going to do anything about it, you said, fishermen are the first to step up to the plate. And I think Gord felt that musicians are the first to step up to the plate. Yeah. And I know poets have said to me, poets are the first to step up to the plate. And I'm like, lawyers are the first to step up on the plate. So we're all competing, and I like that competition. Yeah. And it's true. If we're going to have swimmable, drinkable, fishable water, you have to step up to the plate. It's can't be left to someone else.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you and Gord, you went fly fishing up north. How was that? What was that like? You said you were on the Otonabee River.
Well, you guys fly fish. You know what it's like to fly fish with a guy in black boots, cut off jeans, a jean jacket. My God, he's getting burnt. The bugs are killing him. Yeah. I'm trying to tell him that, I know, that's how you dress normally, but this is going to be different. Yeah. Anyways, and then catch a fish. But he got better. Yeah. A lot better. And, it was just fascinating. It was beautiful. We all end up at the same place, don't we? Around a fire late at night. And there's no one better to be around a fire than with Gord. Whether he was just reciting poetry or reciting, or he would sing songs. I never wanted him too much to do because I didn't want people to force him to do stuff. But if we were alone and stuff, so it was really great, memorable. Things I'll treasure for the rest of my life. But we caught some great fish. We caught a lot of fish. And luckily we were out with William Tozer, who's the great hunter fisherman up in the area, and he was doing most of the cleaning.
Right on. Perfect.
So that helped too.
That is very handy. Yeah.
I didn't want to see Gore with a knife trying to clean a fish. Why not?
Absolutely. So what about the other side of your fly fishing life then? We talked a little bit before the show about Labrador. Can you take us through some of, I guess, your fly fishing background? Yeah,
sure. Rob Steele grew up in Gander, Newfoundland. His father went on to create Steele Communications. And then Rob, he's just become incredibly successful. And his father was a good friend of, what's the name of the airport in St. John, Newfoundland?
St. John's Airport.
Oh, starts with an S. I'm going there next week.
Can't remember.
Anyways,
that's Halifax.
He began Canadian Helicopters Corp, which became the largest private helicopter company in the world.
Oh, wow. Man.
Anyways, I'll remember in a moment. So Rob's dad had Universal Helicopters with 70 helicopters, and Canadian Helicopters Corporation and the airport's named after the guys started, and I should remember in a sec. I don't know how many they have, and they're still hugely successful. Rob's family ended up selling Universal to the new Indigenous provincial authority in Labrador. But both those companies started by their fathers and their love of fly fishing.
Oh, wow.
So
really?
The only way into Labrador was to hire helicopter pilots to take you in. So they were flown in, and their love of fly fishing and they saw these helicopters and thought, wait a second, there's a business in this.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was all about the fly fishing. So Rob has Tom Lumscombe Camp. He also has St. Michael's Camp, both on different rivers. There's I think there's Eagle River, Big River. I mean, Labrador is incredible. It's like so vast, and there are these incredible rivers. And in these rivers are huge runs of salmon and brook trout. And we'd see wolves. Of course, we'd see lots of bears, lots of moose, very few people. The Indigenous communities there were far and few between because they were at the end of the points.
Right.
And we'd go up in the rivers. And, I'd never, to be honest, I can't even remember I'd ever been in a helicopter before I went there. And we'd be landing on rocks and jumping out with our fishing rods and fly fishing. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, and catching the most beautiful fish you've ever seen in your life. And of course, we were catch and release because that's what we were doing up there. And and I should give you a picture. You can post it.
We have to post a picture of you anyway. So please.
So I should send you one of us being out there. But it was, I'd never been so blessed, so privileged to be in that situation, And what a place! What in Canada, Labrador, and that coast, and that perfection. And then right off one of his places in St. Michael's Camp, he has the Puffin Island. There are puffins flying around. There are icebergs going by all up and down that channel that would come into Hudson Bay, you know, and across would be Greenland. Who knew, right? I think I'd been to Newfoundland as a child twice. And so it was really incredible. And when we fly around the helicopters, we see the whales and all the other things, but it was the salmon that really drew everybody there. And it was the salmon and the fly fishing, the actual fly fishing, that truly made it magical and what you dream about for the rest of the year, to get back out there and just to stand on that same rock and start casting your fly and let it float over that hole that you already know exists, and you know that fish is there, and to have that fish, you know, pull on your rod, and you know, just beautiful. Now it's a super wild place though, right? Like there's not a whole lot of stuff going on out there in terms of, you know, like just human activity, right? No, I wouldn't want to be there 3 months later. I don't know what goes on. No, it's completely wild. I mean, they only go for 6 weeks. Most of the camps are open for 6 weeks. Other than that, it's a pretty isolated area. Davis Inlet's just up there. You know, you've got that big Voisey mine development, which is in the north. There's some industry and things, but Labrador is the end of the world. I mean, and that's why the salmon are there.
And that's why the brookies are there.
And that's why the brook trout are there. They're more than happy to be as far away from as any of us can get to them.
For sure.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you notice any, problems with the rivers out there in terms of like water stewardship or anything like that? Or
not that we were on. I mean, we didn't get far enough. You know, I heard the stories.
Yeah.
The Grand River, Happy Valley Goose Bay, and the big dam going on the Grand. But we didn't get up in that area. We have a river keeper up there who's working, and she's a fisher.
Awesome.
And she does a lot of camping and kayaking and tours up there, and she's really trying to connect people to the waterfront. But what I saw up there was just pure. You could drink the water. It was as pure as you've ever seen in your life. The fish were as plentiful as I could imagine. And the wilderness was as dangerous and crazy and exotic as you could imagine. So I don't know what that means, but I also know that it's so hard to get to.
Yeah.
So I was so privileged to have a supporter of Swim Drink Fish from the East Coast, and Rob, and he really is an amazing human being, and he's very privileged in his own right, but he had that access to that to get around. And that's what made all the difference in the world. That airport, God. Look it up, will you?
What's the name of that thing?
I brought Matt here just to do one thing, to look up things I forgot. His name is Craig something, and the airport in St. John's is named after him and his family. And he is a huge fly fisherman, salmon fisherman, who really is legendary in that area. So,
what was one of the most memorable moments of that trip?
The wolves.
Oh yeah.
Funny enough, our most memorable
up north, Ontario,
up north
on Attawapsca.
Yeah, so like the tip of Ontario, went to Attawapsca River, was the wolves.
Yeah,
tons of wolves.
Sure.
They look like ghosts. You know, it's so ghostly.
Yeah, and you're standing there fishing, and I'm loving. I'm catching the fish, but let me tell you, I didn't expect two wolves to turn around the corner and see us and go so fast through the water. They're more afraid than we were. Yeah, but I'm not so sure.
Are they afraid or curious?
Well, I think they were sort of afraid during the day, but I think they would reconsider and come back for you if you let them.
Yeah. So you actually had a fish and you saw wolves
on the Lomscombe Falls, and they just came down to the bottom, and they didn't see us and we didn't see them. And
oh man,
I think I had been left there for a couple hours, so it'd been very quiet, and they clearly were on their route. But I hadn't really, they were big and beautiful and
huge.
And so the bears scare me too a little bit.
So the bear, I mean, I think you and I could be friends. I mean, that's...
He was terrified of the
terrified of bear. I wasn't even terrified of the wolves. And funny enough, I love the wolves because they kept the bears at bay when we were up north.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they were doing sort of the same for you at that particular instance.
Yeah, I mean, the bears create this crazy excitement too, though, that you're always aware and trying to do your thing. So, a lot of bears up there, though.
Yeah.
And of course, what they say is the moose is the most dangerous of all.
That's what they do say. Yeah.
Yeah, especially like, what is it, during the rutting season?
Ornery.
Right?
Yeah,
Ornery.
and they'll charge you.
Yeah.
Especially when you're out taking a leak in the woods after you go back up there. They say, oh, they hear that. And they'll come. And so I'm like, I don't even know if that's true. They could be just scaring me.
Yeah.
It's like when I was up north, there were all these guys from the States coming up, and Patrick Madabi was just telling me this story yesterday that he took Americans fishing 35 years ago up at Manitoulin, and when they wouldn't catch fish, he said, well, it's because in July the pike lose their teeth, right? So the guy was back up with his new girlfriend this year, and he was coming up fishing, and he was saying to Patrick, oh, well, when they don't, it's the pike lose their teeth. And he goes, you still believe that 30 years later? Like, are you crazy? We were just...
Oh my God.
Pike are losing their
That's
teeth.
why they don't, that's why they don't bite in July.
Amazing.
That's funny.
But I love those stories too, because I'm also a bit ignorant and go into these crazy, amazing places. And I'm sure I would believe any story anybody told me too.
Yeah.
And when you hear those stories later in life and those fishing stories, it just makes it makes me laugh, but it's just great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, okay, so you've been fly fishing. So based on that experience, what kind of advice would you have for us as water stewards in order to keep being stewards of our rivers? I mean,
I think the most important thing, and, I'm doing this for 30 years, is to really don't ever accept, don't fish, don't swim, don't fish, drink signs. I mean, those are put up to keep you away. Mm-hmm. We put them up because we say, oh, it's dangerous. You shouldn't eat that fish. You shouldn't go swimming in that water and stuff. And okay, temporarily. Mm-hmm. But don't put them up to push us away forever, because what we're really doing is we think we're protecting people, but what we're really doing is pushing them away for life. Mm-hmm. And so every kid, everybody in the city of Toronto who no longer knows that Lake Ontario's their drinking water, no longer knows what fish live there, no longer has a connection to, the weather and the wind and nature. And they don't have some rich uncle or parent who's sending them up to camp to sort of experience it.
Yeah.
You're losing a voice forever. And so I think it's really important as fishermen, particularly, that we, don't get pushed around, that we demand the best, and we recognize that this is a really important cultural icon. This is a part of being Canadian, and this is something that we do want to protect. It's not something that we're prepared to sacrifice. And with technology now, I mean, restoration is a beautiful word. A lot of the mistakes we made are not permanent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's amazing how quickly things come back. So
succession, I guess.
Yeah.
Right?
So don't let anybody confuse you. Oh, that happened a long time ago. It's never going to come back. What are you talking about? You could have salmon and pike and habitat in the Toronto 9 rivers again. Mm-hmm. All of them fresh, beautiful, cold water spring fed from the Oak Ridges Moraine, running through our city. They can all be alive and well again.
Yeah.
We can have a lake where we can eat the fish again. So I feel like they say there's more fishermen than golfers. Thank God.
Amen.
Well, I'll work on the golfers later.
Yeah.
I think the fishermen sometimes get pushed into a corner and they feel sometimes that, they have to be more conservative, and they have to be more, they have to be less, advocates and more rational, because they see around them all these crazy people running around and being against everything. No, there's nothing wrong with being for something.
Yeah.
And I just remind them of that. There's nothing wrong with stepping up for what you believe in. I get it. You don't want to be a person who's against everything. You recognize modernity and where we're at, but give it a second thought and think about what you're for, and don't be afraid to represent. And if you're for fisheries and habitat and connection to water and clean water, that doesn't make you a hippie. Yeah. Even though I might have been one myself. I don't know what a hippie is anymore. But anyways, all my fishermen friends are very conservative.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're also great people and big hearts. Mm-hmm. And so when I say I'm an environmentalist, it can get people a little worried. Sure. But then they get to know me a little bit and recognize that, my roots are the same as theirs. And, It's just a matter of getting over that hurdle.
Yeah.
Being protective of fish and fisheries and being for clean water is not
exactly
a radical idea.
No, and I think the idea of swim, drink, fish, and the ability to eat a fish from the river is something that no angler across the fishing community can argue with. I think, like we like to practice catch and release, but we're not opposed to keeping fish at all. We've done it, and we know lots of people that believe completely in catching fish and that you should be able to just hunt for your fish and keep the fish from the river. So I think what we're all kind of fighting for the same thing, and I think that's another reason why we want to kind of do these episodes is to pull it together and break down those barriers of like, environmental activists, sort of hippie people, and then the conservative, hunter fishing people. It's kind of these titles we give ourselves. It's all kind of bullshit in a way.
Yeah.
Well, I'll also say I grew up a hunter.
Yeah.
I still hunt camps, and Ducks Unlimited was, something that I was very proud of as a young kid, and I still am. And they were the biggest water conservation group that ultimately grew out. They were the most environmental group. Mm-hmm. They're afraid of that tag now.
Yeah.
I think it's unfortunate.
What is it that freaks them out?
Gun laws.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
just all these political things kind of aligning.
Pro-gun, the states, the money being spent. I mean, being afraid that someone's going to take away their right to go duck hunting or to go fishing, and whether that, that's not true. No one's doing that. And anyway, so it's very unfortunate. And I still believe in and I know their fathers, many of them who aren't alive today, would be rolling in their graves to think that their kids aren't standing up for the conservation ethic that was so essential to the original purpose of Ducks Unlimited. And so I still see hope in those organizations, and I love them deeply. And, and the fishermen, I think we need to start having inner city kids again feeling safe about going in the water in our cities. That's what the Gord Edgar Downey Pier, and I'm hoping Toronto will have one off Ontario Place soon, and Hamilton and everywhere else. And I'm hoping new Canadians can experience that and not feel like, that they are part of the Canadian culture as well, and they can go down there and feel like I call it an art installation for them. And I say, you should go down there and experience this art installation. You jump in this cold water and you feel this crazy sensation, and you'll sink and die if you don't start flapping. Oh, great. And then you can take a selfie and you can go home. So and the environment is an art installation in some
that's
ways.
Interesting.
That's the way I talk about it.
You know what? I kind of love that too.
And if that's what it takes to get them involved at the beginning, and I go back to Gord Downey, I tell you, he hated fishermen and all the camel gear and the way the fishermen had all the waders and everything, and then he'd go to the beach and they'd be all these ripped muscles, and they're what are those shirts called that I was
tank tops?
Tank tops, and they had all the girls and they knew all the music, and his watermark was that I'm just a corny little white kid who didn't feel very welcome at a beach or on a fishing boat or on a sailboat, right? And I don't belong to this community. And it took a lot of guts for Gord to realize, no, that's my waterfront too, and my experience is just as valid as theirs, and it'll be my experience, and I don't need to fall into their experience. And so Gord taught us a lot about that. And
that's a really cool way of looking at it, actually.
It is. It's you know how many people get pushed away from our waterfronts by so many different fashions or fads or whatever. Hey man, we own it. It's not owned by the government or the corporations or the polluters. We own all our waters. It's our waters, and it's your experience. And hey,
if it makes you feel better, I think it's less and less of those muscle douchey dudes that are on the I actually think I feel a lot of hope for the new generation that's coming up. There's a lot of inclusivity and
I think that perspective Gord shared though about it belonging to everyone.
That's what I'm saying.
You can print your own thing is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. And I think what I'm saying is our new generation now are realizing that they can do that.
I agree.
Maybe some of them.
That's the hope.
Absolutely.
And I think in the urban centers where most people live, that's where we need to make the most effort to give them that connection, because they're not going to know. They're not going to run a charity like I do and know some guy who's going to take them on a helicopter. They might not get into some of these northern areas. They need to start here, and this is where they learn the basics about living on a Great Lake, and this is where you learn about weather and temperature and depth and water and fisheries, and it's right here.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Well, I think making it your own though is a huge.
Yeah.
I mean, because Gord. It's funny because when he's saying about the stars and Bob Cage and everyone from hunters to hippies to left, right, whatever, we're singing along. So I think it's something to be said about doing it your own way and running with it. And I hope to see that more too, for sure. Get the name of the airport, eh? Craig.
Dobbin. Craig Dobbin.
That's
Dobbin
it.
Airport. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Craig and his family, they started Canadian Helicopters Corp, and it's called the Dobbin Airport in St. John's, Newfoundland. And he was this fly fisherman.
So awesome.
And that's what built his business, his love for fishing.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
So apart from, I guess, Lake Ontario, what are some special other places in Ontario that you hold dear?
Well, I'm the Lake Ontario waterkeeper. I started here, but swim, drink, fish is it's all over the place. We run Fraser Riverkeeper, North Saskatchewan Riverkeeper. We have a camp up on Camp Anaquana on the Abitibi, just south of Moose Factory, Moosonee. We run Swim Guide, Drink Guide. These are platforms that give you information about whether you can drink the water, whether you can go swimming in it. Watermark, where we collect the stories that are basically the evidence. That's what I think of it as. That will protect water bodies going forward. So if you fish on the water, you swam on the water, you don't think of it as evidence, but believe it or not, capturing those stories and geotagging those watersheds going forward are what are going to protect them.
Yes,
so we have that project as well.
That's an awesome way to look at it, actually.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a historical evidence of what the river once was.
Yeah. So that nobody can come in and say, hey, there's no value to this water.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? You got this family.
Yeah.
And so we are trying to populate the entire country with these stories.
Yeah.
And very much encouraging fishermen who go to these areas and see things and have these stories that are so important to them, but making sure that those stories are somehow archived on those watersheds. So that's our Watermark project.
The Watermark project, by the way, if you haven't seen what it is, check it out online because it's super cool. There's tons of stories on there from all over the place, all over Canada about different rivers and things like that. We'd love to contribute to that. We went to the Attawapiskat last July and we took a ton of content.
Attawapiskat. That's so awesome.
It was the best.
And talk about
It was the best.
just pristine river. That's
And did you fly into Fort Albany?
we flew into it was right into like a cabin in the middle of the Attawapiskat.
So you landed on the water.
Yeah, landed on the water.
From Hearst.
From Hearst.
From Hearst.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And our guide was an Indigenous fella from Fort Albany, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He was guiding there for 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
It was amazing. But the river was just like, we drank all our water from the river the whole week. We caught fish that just a crazy amount of fish. Like
You catching
ridiculous.
walleye?
Oh, yeah.
Crazy walleye.
on the fly, topwater walleye.
Wow.
And we ate some of the walleye because we caught
It's
so
unheard
many,
of.
and they were
they're great.
delicious.
Delicious.
Cleanest fish like I've ever had. It was it was amazing.
Yeah.
But one day that could come under threat, that river too, right? Because why not?
Well, you were on the Albany?
Attawapiskat River, yeah.
The Attawapiskat. Oh, right.
Down
so you're
from-
in Attawapiskat.
down
So it's
from
a
the
smaller
Attawapiskat.
little tributary. Is that a tributary?
It's a that's a pretty main river. It comes out of James Bay.
Oh, and it runs around that little... Yeah, because
kinda goes
the
like
Albany
a-
comes out at Fort Albany, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the Attawapiskat's the one that comes
It's just
from the
below
south.
it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Amazing.
So I've only been there
Beautiful
once. I
river.
was there with the Tragically Hip when they went up to do a concert in Fort Albany in the middle of the winter.
Yeah.
And I know that Attawapiskat and Fort Albany are like incredible place. And I knew that the Albany River is the last Ontario free flowing river.
Yeah.
It's the last one we have in the province.
Oh, man.
So
It was
all the
amazing.
others have dams just for your
Everything else is dammed up.
in Ontario. Yeah.
Wow, jeez.
So the Attawapiskat is that's beautiful. That was great. Well, one day I'll have to get you up to Camp Anaquana.
Oh, man, totally. It'd be amazing. Talk about a podcast.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of black flies and mosquitoes when you're there?
Oh, yeah. Well, once you're on
These
the
guys-
river,
Yeah, we're fine.
it was fine.
Yeah, it was fine.
It could have been worse. We
It could
expected
have been
worse.
worse. Yeah, we expected worse. I think, maybe because it was really windy,
Yeah.
that helped. And
Oh, that's good.
yeah, Temagami is probably
Oh, yeah.
speaking of an Ontario a beautiful wilderness,
The bugs.
they have bugs.
They take you away.
Oh my God, they take
Wicked.
me away. I flew for the first time, actually.
Makes
They
you
were-
feel really
Bugs picked you right up.
Just
makes
picked
you
me right
feel
up.
like you don't ever want to be a moose.
Oh,
No,
man.
I don't know how they do
I don't
it.
know. Yeah, that's crazy.
Don't know how they do it.
Thanks so much, guys, for having me on, by the way.
Yeah, no.
And I love radio. Kristen and I did 100 podcasts.
Oh my God, really?
Called Living at the Barricades, in the 2000s. And but then we had to focus our attention on building these platforms, swim guide and stuff. So we put all our money into building these new platforms that would give people this information about water quality. So, but I miss the days of doing radio.
Is that stuff still alive for people to find it somewhere?
Matt? Yeah, I think it's all on Apple. We were doing really well.
Oh.
We did weekly.
On SoundCloud, rad.
Yeah, it's on SoundCloud.
We'll post that link in the show notes too.
It
But
would have been perfect to have you at the CBC building, though. You know, I apologize of our workload here, but I mean,
I prefer to be here. I don't know if the listeners know that, but I actually have a beer on these great big wooden tables, and it's so light.
Yeah,
and I don't feel like I'm selling out by going down to the CBC.
That's right.
I don't know.
That's right. Nice.
I love the CBC, but I'm worried. Worried about its future. So.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
So we have 5 questions actually on the show that we ask every single person.
Before we let you go.
Great.
And we have questions. Everyone on 5 questions. And they're very fly fishy questions. So we'll start with number 1. And take your time answering them. It's not like a buzzer beater thing. So this first question is, what is your favorite fish and why?
Wait. Before we start,
can
you please introduce the segment correctly, please?
Oh, yeah. This segment is called Mitchie's Fishies 5. There we go. My name is Mitchie, and there's 5 questions. And they're all fishy. We go all out on this show.
Right.
All out.
I have a segment, but we won't do that today. Anyways, continue.
And I'm not going to be difficult and say, how can I pick one?
Yeah.
So,
do anything you want. But what is your favorite fish and why?
Really hard, but truth be told, and I'm not going to pick mammals, whales and dolphins because they're not really fish. I'm just going to go with the smallmouth bass.
Awesome.
They are always exciting. It's always an amazing experience to catch them, and they're always in really cool, interesting places. And so smallmouth bass, if you can go smallmouth bass, you can't go wrong.
It's beautiful Ontario fish.
Absolutely. My favorite.
Yeah.
Actually,
and they taste good. I mean, you guys probably catch and release, but they don't taste bad either.
No, I've actually never had a smallmouth bass.
Really?
Never. I think I need to try one just to try one.
Oh, well, you see, so now it's changed. But when we were kids, of course, we ate them. Yeah, that was our favorite fish to eat.
I've had one on Georgian Bay, on Christian Island, and it was good. It was a bit fishy, I must admit.
Might have been in the summer.
It was in the summer, right?
Yeah. If you get them, you don't want to get the smallmouth bass in the shallow water in the summer because they can get a little soft.
That's exactly what happened. Yep.
Classic.
Good to know. Classic.
Definitely don't eat those largemouth bass that you get in the marsh in the summer because they're really soft.
3 feet of water.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Number 2. So this one is, if you could fish anywhere in the world right now, where would you go and why?
Yeah, it would be Eagle River, Labrador.
Yep.
And it would be to go back to my favorite spot where I fly, we're fly fishing for salmon. There's nothing like it.
It's just extraordinary. It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Especially flying in a helicopter.
Jesus.
Man.
Who are you?
You should see the size of these salmon. And
man.
They're beautiful. And they're silver and they're gorgeous.
Yeah.
Atlantic salmon. Yep.
Number 3 is, what is your best fishing memory?
Yeah, that's easy. It's getting up 5 a.m. when my father would come in, and he'd be out late, but we'd get up in the morning and head off to Main Duck Island in Lake Ontario, which is about 25 miles due south of Wolf Island. That's my life. That's what I mean, my father died when I was 14, so it's just so powerful. And being out in the middle of Lake Ontario and going to this island that reminds me of the Galapagos Island, where the elm trees are all huge and there's water snakes everywhere and the bass are jumping everywhere. I mean, that's the perfect picture for me. So that's my memory. A summer day with dawn coming up, heading out to the Main Duck Island.
Main Duck Island, man, that is...
You've never been there?
So I first heard about Main Duck Island actually in an interview Gord did on, I think it was The Hour.
Yeah, because I take him there every year.
I heard that interview and I was like, I have to go.
Found out about it.
It looks like the most amazing place ever.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, if you've never been... And, for Lake Ontario to have a place like that.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah.
And to get there and discover it, it's like the Bermuda Triangle there. It's called the Marysville Vortex. There was an old meteor, so none of your compasses work. There's 189 ships that crashed. It was the old bootleggers spot. There's stuff buried there, but the shoals are full of fish, and the water snakes, the big black water snakes, are everywhere. There's nobody there. And, like I said, the elm trees are 200 years old, and you go, wow, that's what elm trees look like.
Oh man.
It's amazing.
Prehistoric.
And it's in the middle of the lake,
right in the
and
middle.
it's special, and it smells different, and it looks different, and everything about it is incredible. It's 550 acres.
Yeah. Okay.
It's got high cliffs on one side and beaches on the other, and all kinds of shoals.
So the fishing was good.
That's where every American goes.
Just amazing
from Clayton and upstate New York. That's where they head.
Boat on over.
Right on. And you can get them in 25 feet of water. You can get them off the shoals. The fishing's everywhere. And that was where Lake Ontario's commercial fishery was centered. There was a village of over 70 to 80 huts there where people fished all summer.
Oh man.
Yeah. So all of that debris and that weird history is still there.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Check out pictures of it online. It's like like you say, it's like a tropical island.
It is.
It just looks amazing.
And the waters is pure and smells
blue
different and looks different and tastes different, and everything about it is amazing. Oh man. Anyways,
that's
a lot of birds too.
Yeah, it's like a big like migratory sort of route.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of people out there. I guess you're like
nobody. I mean, the sailors go there. There's a little marina that the government's built. It's a federal park, so they built a danger bay where you can go in, and they have washrooms, and and so it's still there for that. The Queen once stopped there and had her lunch on her big fancy boat in the early 70s, and it used to be Dulles from Dulles Airport in Washington. He owned it. It was American until 72, and Canada got it back.
Whoa, no, till 72.
Yeah,
wow.
And Dulles would hide out up there. And
no way.
His chimney and his foundations are still there from where he lives.
Man.
So I can show you that one day.
That is cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
And yeah. Anyways,
crazy
make sure you get there.
Yeah.
Anybody who loves Lake Ontario, make sure you go to Maine.com.
It's not in a rowboat though, eh?
No. Very dangerous. It's an ocean out there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So number 4 is, why do you fly fish? Or why do you fish at all?
Because I'm 57 now, and I need to fill my time with things that I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And there's nothing better than fly fishing for time.
Yeah.
And it, it's beautiful. It's athletic. It's entertaining. Mm-hmm. There's always excitement and imagination at the end of it. And it takes a lot of time. Mm-hmm. And that's what us older folks need. We need to fill a lot of time. And be enjoyed. And I know a lot of other people go golfing, a lot of people go to the racetrack, a lot of people, I don't know what else they do, they watch Netflix, but for me, fly fishing fills that void.
This might seem a little lofty, but time does kind of stand still when you're fly fishing. It's like a time saver.
It does stand still, but it also takes up a lot
goes.
of time before you know it.
It's nighttime.
Yeah.
It's true. So this next one, number 5, the final in Mitchie's Fishies 5, is, what fly pattern represents you best and why?
So I don't know what a fly pattern is, but I know this, that, my favorite with the fly was to cast it as far away to the left as I could and let the current take it and just buzz it across that deep hole. So I don't know what that is.
Swinging.
Oh yeah, swinging with like a...
So I love to swing the fly, and that's what makes...
Probably the bomber when you were fishing salmon.
Probably bomber, yeah.
Big sit on the top of the water type of fly.
Yeah, they were all made by guys from Gander, Newfoundland.
Yeah.
They made their own flies and put them on. But I mean, for me to swing that fly across that deep hole where there was nothing more exciting for me than that. So
swing is the best.
I guess swinging. What else is there?
Well, when it comes to fly patterns, there's so many. It's just like any kind of lure, right?
Yeah. Dropping them.
Do you remember? I mean, when you were a kid, you were probably fishing with worms and hooks like the rest. Like
no,
everybody,
that's what.
right?
Yeah. I was an artificial worm guy.
Yeah.
With the big spinner on the front, and the little worm. Oh, yeah. Those are my favorites. And the maps, you need those every once in a while. You had the Daredevil.
Yeah.
I love it.
And then, live bait was, I'd get it for everyone else. But the truth is, I didn't like fishing with live bait.
Yeah.
Yeah, neither did
nothing worse than putting a poor little frog on the end of your hook and sending him out there. It just broke my heart every time. But
even leeches,
to be a man.
We all have a one point, right?
Yeah.
But we get to fly fishing eventually for, kind of those reasons as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's not
It's a little.
You get to make a artificial fly.
We do, yeah.
Beautiful.
You tie them all up. It's amazing.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So what does Swim Drink Fish have in store for the summer and the fall and rest of the year?
Well, Tuesdays and Thursdays, anybody who wants to come out in the Toronto Harbor can be part of our environmental hub and learn how to sample and see their results ultimately published on Swim Guide. We also have an environmental hub in Niagara, one up on Manitoulin Island. We have one in Vancouver. So there's a lot of opportunity to get involved with our work. Our legal work, we don't need that many volunteers for, because it's a very difficult, it's a different area. It requires professionals.
Yeah.
So in terms of engaging the public, citizen science, sampling, monitoring, if you want to get involved, just even in your neighborhood, Swim Guide's everywhere. Mm-hmm. We update more than 8,000 beaches around the world every morning. It's a free app. Nothing. We don't charge money for anything. So if you just want to go to www.theswimguide.org or go to Google or what's the other one called? Apple. Yeah. And then you download the app. You can see all the beaches, see the water quality, see how they chart, see how they've done over the course of the year, take photos for us. If you see pollution, send it to us on that site. Get involved, learn how to take control of that waterfront yourself and help protect it. That's what we're really trying to do, is build a community of people working for swimmable, drinkable, fishable water. So that's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. We do so much else. I don't even know what else to say. I just really want to talk about fish. So call me up if you want.
Yeah.
Go to waterkeeper.ca in Canada, or swimdrinkfish.ca. And just stay in touch. We have 2 offices here in downtown Toronto. We're all over the country. We've got great people, amazing board members, incredible ambassadors, hockey players, writers, all kinds of people who just love this country and love the wilderness and love fishing. So we can find a way to take advantage of anyone's passion for water.
That's amazing. I mean, it's been so good talking to you and hearing about
Thank you guys.
all your stories and everything else.
It's been great.
And thanks so much for coming.
Thanks, Shana. Thanks, Mitch.
Yeah.
Really great being here.
Absolutely.
No, it's been awesome. You can find all SoFly stuff at SoFly.ca, including this show. And if you're listening to it, then that's kind of irrelevant information. But check us out on social. Instagram, we're the SoFly Crew, and you can reach out to us at the SoFlyCrew@gmail.com with any questions. If you want to find more information about Waterkeeper or what we're trying to do to kind of motivate fishermen on the river to clean things up and push this forward. That's it for me, Mitch. Yilma.
Bye-bye.
And thanks so much for listening, everybody. And and goodbye to Matt, too.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Care, guys. Thanks.
All right. Thanks.